people. So welcome, everyone. Just 1 year after the Dobbs decision stole the constitutional right to abortion, we stand here facing yet another decision by far-right Supreme Court justices that show us clearly that they do not stand with the American people. As Chief Justice Warren said in Brown versus Board of Education, that education is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Yet today, the Supreme Court made it harder to achieve education on equal terms in the United States of America. They made it harder for Black, Latino, Indigenous, Asian American, and Pacific Islanders to achieve their dream of attending one of the many prestigious colleges that we have here in Massachusetts and across our country. This extremist court has made the United States a more unequal place than it already was and betrayed their responsibility to protect the rights of every American and their dreams for their future. They have made the ivory tower taller for those Americans who are not among the wealthy, who are not among the well-connected few in our nation. Equal opportunity for all is a universal value in American culture, and any threat to that shared value is a threat to our multiracial democracy and economy. Yet the far-right extremist majority on the Supreme Court is directing colleges and universities to turn a blind eye to structural racism and instead to perpetuate a pre-existing condition of injustice that has systematically denied Black and brown students access to the best in American education. This ruling is a devastating blow to making education available to all on equal terms for everyone. The decision to deny consideration of race in school admissions is grounded in the misguided notion that colorblindness is justice. Colorblindness ignores deeply rooted institutional racism and its impacts on people based on the color of their skin. The Supreme Court of the United States is stomping on the dreams of our young people. The Supreme Court majority may think that they are blind to race, but what they are truly blind to is inequality, blind to injustice, blind to progress that our country must make. That is what the Supreme Court is blind to. Considering race in college admissions is a key tool for diversifying campuses, increasing equity and fairness, and strengthening our education system with different perspectives and lived experiences. The Supreme Court's decision today reflects radical right-wing extremist vision of America that is just out of step with the vast majority of the American people. This decision will deepen the gaps of opportunity and erect further barriers in the pursuit of equal justice for Black and brown communities all across our country. Congress must act. We must make sure we continue to open the door of opportunity and make sure that door is open to everyone in our country. We must give people the just and equal opportunity to achieve their educational dreams. And we must pass the Judiciary Act to expand the Supreme Court, reclaim the stolen seats, and begin to restore its legitimacy in the eyes of the American people. The Judiciary Act is now going to, in fact, get even more momentum The Dobbs decision created a movement that has NARAL and Planned Parenthood, that has gun safety organizations, that has the League of Conservation Voters, all saying we must expand the court to reclaim the 2 stolen seats that the Republicans took from the American people in 2016, Merrick Garland's seat, and then in 2020, a week before the election, when they jammed through Amy Coney Barrett. We know that we must reclaim those 2 seats, or else the Dobbs decision combined with this decision is just a preview of coming atrocities as this Supreme Court seeks to repeal all of the progress that began in the 1960s and the 1970s in our country. For minorities, for women, for the LGBT community, for the environment, for civil rights, for voting rights in our country. It's all on the table, and this decision is just the next installment. So expanding the Supreme Court is not simply a position of principle anymore. It is now a matter of urgent and practical need. They have stolen reproductive rights, rolled back access to education, unleashed more guns on the streets of our country, all making us more unsafe and less equal in our country. And they are just getting started. We must begin to expand the Supreme Court now to reclaim those 2 stolen seats. We must undo the damage the Republicans have done by creating that new Supreme Court that will rightly reflect the values of the majority of the American people on whose behalf they serve. Expanding the court is constitutional. Congress has done it before, and Congress must do it again. It is our obligation as a Congress to protect and uphold the rights of every single American. So I ask my colleagues in the Senate again, what other evisceration of fundamental rights in our country must take place before you are willing to act? How much more do we have to endure from this illegitimate Supreme Court before you are willing to act? What more must we tolerate from this Supreme Court that stands for the few and not the many in our country before you are willing to act? So this is a historic moment in our country's history, and we have gathered with us leaders from the Massachusetts community who are going to stand up and fight for the rights of everyone. And I'm going to begin by introducing Dr. Joseph Cooper, Special Assistant to the Chancellor for Black Life at University of Massachusetts in Boston. Dr. Cooper.
Good afternoon. I will be reading a statement on behalf of the UMass System Schools. I am a Special Assistant to the Chancellor for Black Life at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, with Chancellor Marcelo Suarez Orozco. University system officials are working with the provosts and admissions directors on the 5 UMass campuses to assess how the university's admissions processes may be influenced by the changes to the law. The University of Massachusetts will continue to follow the law and will do so while sustaining its deep commitment and long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. At UMass, diversity is integral in conferring unmatched educational benefits in our campus community and beyond. Exposure to many viewpoints from people from different backgrounds and different life experiences is a cornerstone of UMass education. It drives inquiry into research and on complex issues of the day and enables creativity and innovation to flourish. For us at UMass, academic excellence and diversity are 2 sides of the same coin. We believe this is critical to the preparation of our students to succeed in a global economy. Thank you.
Great job. Next, we're going to hear from Tracy Griffith, Racial Justice Program Director at the ACLU, Massachusetts. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Senator Markey. As you said, my name is Tracy Griffith. I'm the Director of the Racial Justice Program for the ACLU of Massachusetts. And as we feared, the Supreme Court has restricted schools' ability to fully address systemic racial inequalities. But let's be clear. The course decision today does not change the responsibility of colleges and universities to increase educational opportunities for students of color. Indeed, the majority acknowledges the values of diversity are commendable goals, and that schools can consider applicants' own discussion of their race and how it has affected their lives. Colleges have long recognized diversity is a mission critical to creating enriching educational environments for all of their students. Our institutions of higher education must double down on that. They have to double down on that commitment and advance policies that ensure that every student gets a fair chance. Our nation's future is thriving multiracial democracy, and it depends on students having freedom and opportunity to learn, to work together, and to understand what unites us, not what divides us. As Justice Jackson notes in her dissent, many of the gains that people of color have made in recent decades, and the majority of that comes from this justification for this decision, it's only been made possible by the policies like affirmative action. And this ruling perpetuates the disingenuous and ahistorical notion that we live in a colorblind society. But as Justice Jackson also notes, our country has never been colorblind. We know that. And ignoring race, she writes, will not make racism go away. Likewise, the movement against affirmative action is part of a larger effort, as Senator Markey said, right, to rewrite our nation's history, erase the experiences of people of color, and obstruct our full and equal participation in democracy. Across the country, we are seeing books by Black and LGBTQ authors banned from schools, and it's an attempt to stop students at all levels from learning and talking about race and gender in public schools. But the ACLU will continue to fight these discriminatory policies, both here in Massachusetts and across our nation. We are united by our shared commitment to opportunity and freedom from discrimination. Understand, although the majority may pretend otherwise, we know that when everyone has access to what they need, we all thrive. Thank you.
Now we are going to hear from Nikki Thomas, organizer with the graduate employees of Northeastern University, UAW. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. As Senator Markey said, my name is Nikki Thomas. I'm a fifth-year PhD student in bioengineering at Northeastern University, and I'm also a committee organizer for our graduate student union, the Graduate Employees at Northeastern University, GEN-UAW. I wish I could say that I'm surprised by this decision, but I'm not. It doesn't surprise me at all that this court would uphold white supremacist values. Sorry, I didn't really prepare a speech. But to me, this is all the more reason why it is important that we are unionizing at our academic institutions and elsewhere, because the system that we live under doesn't uphold our rights, clearly, and we have to do it for ourselves. So today, my institution, Northeastern University, sent a note about this decision saying that they would continue to uphold their values regardless of what happened today. However, in my experience as a student there and a worker there, their values don't demonstrate that they care about Black and brown lives. Just as an example, very recently they sent NUPD to harass me and other union organizers of color and queer organizers for unionizing on our campus. But that just makes us stronger, honestly. It makes us want to fight it more. And if the Supreme Court and the government aren't going to uphold our rights as people of color, then we have to do it ourselves through unionization. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Jonathan Ng, from Mass Teachers Association, a communications specialist.
Thank you, Senator Markey. I'm Jonathan Ng, and as Senator Markey said, I am the spokesperson for the Massachusetts Teachers Association, representing 117,000 members in pre-K to 12, as well as public higher education. I'm reading a statement put out earlier today by our president, Max Page, and vice president, Deb McCarthy. The Massachusetts Teachers Association condemns the Supreme Court's decision as it places additional barriers in front of the students who already face the greatest challenges in pursuing higher education, particularly BIPOC students. The MTA represents thousands of unionized educators working at public colleges and universities across the state who are committed to ensuring that every resident who is college ready can actually pursue and obtain a degree. We know that the college admissions process was never fair to begin with, and the Supreme Court unjustly struck down a measure that ever so slightly benefited students who do not come from privileged backgrounds. We can take action right now here in Massachusetts to preserve access to higher education for traditionally marginalized students and to make sure that these students succeed. Passing the Cherish Act, currently before the state legislature, is an excellent first step towards that goal. Provisions of that bill increase financial support for students and will improve availability of support services for BIPOC and other marginalized, non-traditional, and first-generation students, increasing the likelihood of success in their academic and career pursuits. Providing access to high-quality, debt-free public higher education is an important way to lessen the impact of today's terrible Supreme Court's decision. Thank you.
Beautiful job. Questions?
Senator Markey, can you speak to the perspective of Asian students in these lawsuits who say it is their race, it is their stereotypes against them, their personality traits, leadership qualities that have hurt their chances in getting into schools like Harvard, that they feel like they've been treated unfairly in the admissions process currently?
Universities should be free to ensure that they reflect the diversity in our society in order to amplify the educational experience at those elite universities. That has been the policy for a generation. It is something that is a very important part of the educational process, so that the students are exposed to all of the different cultures within our society. And I think that's a part of the educational process as well, and that is what has been struck down today.
How do you foresee college admissions, that process moving forward now? We're hearing from UMass, we're hearing from other schools that say they are kind of taking a look at how that process is going to go. How do you foresee that going, being Boston is an educational mecca in the Northeast?
Well, as President Biden said, the National Department of Education now has to look at executive orders that it could issue. It has to look at ways in which it can affect the actual implementation of this decision in a way that avoids discriminatory practices being imposed upon black, brown, indigenous, and other communities in our country. And I know that UMass is committed to doing everything they can. In other states in previous decades, we've seen a collapse of black and brown admissions at the college level after decisions were made, and we just can't allow that to happen here in Massachusetts. We have to find a way that ensures that admission at our best public and private schools reflects the totality of the population in our state. I live in Malden. Just 2 years ago, the graduating class at Malden High School was essentially 25% white, 25% black, 25% Asian, and 25% Latino. But going to school in Malden is not the same as going to school in the suburbs of Massachusetts. And that school body at Malden actually represents the future of our state and what it's going to look like. And it's important for our public universities of higher education to reflect that change and to ensure that everyone is exposed to the cultures which are now going to be included in being able to maximize their God-given abilities. And so I come from that experience, and I want to make sure it gets protected and it's reflected, and I'm hopeful and I'm confident that our Massachusetts higher education system will attempt to accomplish that goal.
Senator, how would expanding the Supreme Court help here, and couldn't Republicans just do the same thing if they were upset about a SCOTUS decision?
The Republicans have stolen 2 Supreme Court seats. If we don't do anything about it, we should just expect, like down the schoolyard, for them to keep coming and taking our lunch money over and over again. When someone takes your lunch money, you got to fight. They stole 2 seats. We got to get those 2 seats back. We got to make sure that America reflects who we are, and we can't allow those stolen seats to be there for the next several decades, engaging in discriminatory practices against minorities, against women, against LGBTQ community, against environmental progress in our society. Again, the Supreme Court says it's colorblind. It's not. What it is truly blind to equality, truly blind to justice, truly blind to the progress we need to make in our society. And that's why we're going to need to expand the Supreme Court.